I'm Liz.
And I'm Marie, and this is Mock Kit, a podcast sponsored by MetroStar, where we take a deep dive into UX design, trending design projects and topics, and chat with our friends in the field. Let's get started.
Cool. So today Marie and I have a little bit of a flashback to some of our original episodes with just being the two of us. So one, I'm super excited for that. And two, I'm super excited. Our topic today is driving your career forward and dissecting what the work of a government contractor looks like. So yeah, let's dive in. So let's get started. So do you want to go first and talk about how you landed in government contracting?
Sure. So I landed in, I think in season 1, we talked about where we started too in one of the first episodes. I was applying to 2 different jobs. One was a commercial base, one was a government contractor, and I ended up in the government contracting, taking that offer, mostly because in my job interview, they said the phrase being voluntold for stuff. So as someone new out of school, that was exciting to me because that meant that there was room for growth with that company. And so ever since then, I had a really great experience with that company. But yeah, ever since then, I've looked for places where the swim lanes were not so defined, and that there is you can just tell with how it's presented, or when you talk with other people from that company, is it super strict, super defined, and that works for some people. For me, I like the gray, swishy, creative area and defining it.
Yeah, man, you should have gone second. That's so much. That's a great segue into. I totally feel that with the sort of the loosey goosiness of it, because you can grow, and I think that that's something that especially now that I'm a little bit more into my career, that excites me and doesn't scare me, because I think when you're new into your career, maybe being a little more streamlined is that just helps you get learning into the business world of any job. But yeah, I feel that with the loosey goosiness of it, and the swim lanes are kind of blurred, like you said. So
yeah, it allows for you. We always say that phrase, choose your own adventure. So, but yeah, how did you transition into MetroStar?
Yeah, so I think that some people, I was in various different areas. I first did I worked for nonprofit, then I did commercial, then I did government contracting, then I went to higher ed, and then I went back to government contracting. And I think that I've actually been really happy where I landed at MetroStar with government contracting. I think that in some ways, government contracting, there are a lot of different opportunities, especially in the DC area. And I think now across the country, especially with being remote, there you can be you don't have to be DC based to be a government contractor. But I think being in DC, that's just a very popular field. And so there are a lot of different companies that offer government contracting. I think what was special about MetroStar was the growth opportunity that we were just talking about. There is, in every job description that comes out of MetroStar, it's, you have your basic qualifications. If you're a developer, you probably obviously need to know how to code whatever you're supposed to be coding, or something like that. But then there's also this room for, you can, let's say you are a coder, but then you want to go into more business analyst stuff, or you want to kind of see what the other side does. There's room for interpretation of each job. And there's also a lot of at least with our company, we have our individual career plans, so we can do our ICDPs and kind of, if you don't, for instance, I know that I'm not a coder, but if I wanted to take a coding class, I could use my funds to learn and try something new. So I think that was just exactly what you're saying, very exciting to kind of be in something that be at a company that valued growth, even if it was a little bit outside of what your quote unquote job description was.
Yeah, and I will piggyback on top of that. So my first government contracting job, it was internal for that government contractor. So what I was looking for when I switched was to have the variety of projects that's offered. So not only in maybe what you're doing skill-wise specifically, if you wanna, switch around, I was also looking for the variety of experiences, kind of knocking out what I do as a designer, like over and over again, and like really getting good at that craft and starting from the scratch with the client and the problem. Right, you have that team building with your team, with your client, with figuring out the user problems and that industry that you're in specifically with that project. So that was also really interesting to me to join MetroStar.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I found that I think in sometimes government contracting, you kind of get stuck in your project, not in a bad way, but just, a lot of times you're brought into a government contracting company for a specific project. And then, just like you hone your craft of that project, and then, you don't really, sometimes there's not movement, like there's not opportunity to move to a different project. And I think that we've been very lucky in two ways to, one, be able to move projects, but also to be able to move within our current project so you don't feel stale. Because I think a lot of times that when people feel stale or like they're not growing within their role, then that leads to you have a lower retention rate. But then with sort of our projects and MetroStar, we've been able to basically be like, okay, this is where I am right now. This is where I want to go. And like kind of building those steps where you are in your project to either grow in the project to level up, or to you've kind of leveled up and you've gotten the skill set in your current project to then migrate over into a new project. So I think that's also been something that it is cool about MetroStar, but then also I personally just went through it. So I really appreciate that I've had the opportunities that I've had with switching projects within a company. It's been a wild ride and appreciative that I've had.
Do you want to give any tips for going through that ride? Like you were sharing, you've just done it. So
yeah,
for everyone to know, Liz and I are no longer on the same projects.
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah, I think that, so I guess some of my tips would be, one, we kind of talked about this with Bree. I feel like mentorship is so important. I feel like I would not be where I am with this new project if I didn't have it's sad to say, my previous boss at MetroStar. She really took the time to learn where I wanted to go, and then was like, okay, so I wanted to be a project manager. She was like, you need to build these skills. And then it wasn't like, all right, figure out how to do X, Y, Z, see you later, your next review. It was, here's where I think here's where you are, here's the skills you need to build, here's how we can get you there. And it was through a series of, I took training classes for the PMP to do that. And then I also got real world experience on the project with a safe environment. It wasn't here, go do this. And you're fed to the wolves. It was a very safe environment to kind of I could explore. And if I messed up, I was in a safe environment, or if I had questions, it wasn't you're not dumb for asking a question. So I think mentorship is so important. And then I think also having support. I know I talked to you a lot about I knew I was gonna switch projects. I knew I had various opportunities, and I was I felt very comfortable in our project. I loved everyone I worked with. I loved my bosses. I loved the upper levels. But it was also, a good time for a change, and the opportunity presented itself to become a project manager. So I think not being afraid to sort of fly, even though I'm still I feel I'm still flying, and I don't really I think that's been something that's been an opportunity to you just have to go with it and not be afraid. And if you are afraid, know that your company is going to have your back. If I have questions, I have no qualms going back to my old boss, or I have no qualms going to my new boss and being hey, I don't know what this means, or I'm learning. I just went to a military contract, and never in a million years would I ever thought that I would be on a military contract, but here I am, and I'm learning different language. I'm learning like different protocols, and it's been really great. And it's also been really great to know that if like I'm not understanding something, or if I need like a little bit of help with language or like protocols or whatever, it's okay to ask questions. So I guess those two tips would be to like know where you want to go, and then work with your current environment to figure out how you can get the skill set to get there.
Nice. I will echo on a tip of what not to do, which if our manager listens to this episode, she will remember my great growing experience with her. That's great. If you're not happy on the project that you're at, you have to communicate, no matter how uncomfortable it might make you. You have to start talking about it instead of going like quote unquote around someone's back to try and get off of a project and onto something else. So I would definitely, that is my tip, that no matter how uncomfortable you are, there's lots of ways to figure out how to phrase things that you can Google for advice, or figure out, like, if you're not comfortable verbally saying it, maybe like sending an email that's like, explaining like, hey, I don't know how to phrase this exactly, like it's not personal, but this isn't working out, rather than, just not addressing the issue.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. I too have fallen into that trap at a previous company. And I think now, like looking back, I'm like, I think I would have handled the situation very differently to figure out how to move to a different project in a much more like blunt way. So yeah, I think that is a very, very good tip that my younger self too would have greatly benefited from. Yeah, and then so you've been on a couple different projects here at MetroStar. Did you ever use the internal job board, or how did you learn about different opportunities? What internal business networking? Do you have any suggestions on that or anything like that?
So when I was looking, or not when I was looking, but when I switched from projects, it was the end of a contract. And so when you see kind of that finish line coming up, started having conversations about like, hey, like this was great, or either the contract didn't renew, or if it was just like, hey, this was really great experience. Can I go do this again with a different project? Is there an opening? And then so I really had those in project management roles, looking out and seeing what was coming up next. And then we've been on that. Well, now it's just me now holding it down without you. I think now it's like going on 4 years, right? Because we're in season 2, so
yeah, you're 3.5 years on that project.
Yeah, and so that's been really, I have enjoyed that project because that contract has just changed and evolved every time that we've had a new one. So that has been exciting, and like you said, you work towards your skills to be a project manager. And then so I've worked on my skills of becoming a design team manager, and now also working on being a PO. So within my contract, I haven't had to switch over to a new project, which has, there's pros and cons to everything. I enjoy that our project has changed and that there's been room for me now to grow into as a product owner. Because I always kept thinking about with our projects, like, do I actually really want to go and explore what this role is and join a new team and a new client? Or like, am I kind of good? Like, I really enjoy our team and I enjoy the challenges of our project. So yeah, we have like 2 different pieces of the pie.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think it, with any new job, like even like it's like I'm very comfortable with like where I'm at like MetroStar, but then like learning a new when you switch jobs, like it's learning a new contract, it's learning a new team, it's learning all the stuff that you spent the last like 3.5 years learning. Yeah. So I'm sort of in that phase right now, and I feel like I've been like just like intaking information and I'm like trying to like piece it all together. But on the other hand, I'm like, this is cool. Like I can see the like the skills that I learned on our project and like really like, you know, like from like working with you and our manager and our like our awesome team. I can apply those same skill sets and like those same like confidences that I learned to the new project. So I think that like there's just like so many ways that you can sort of, like you said, like there are like pros and cons to everything. And I think that we've been very lucky that we've had pros and like we've had the ability to choose between pros and cons and had like be able to weigh like which way we wanted our career to kind of like twist and turn and wind around. So yeah, I think we've been lucky. And so making it a little bit more broad for like not just like our work specifically with MetroStar, but government contracting as a whole, what do you think are like your pros of working for government contractors?
Yeah, well, I want to take one quick step back.
Yeah,
I think,
so
no,
go for it.
you're good. I think it's really important to mention, because I was thinking about this, especially within government, and knowing that I am a female, and like, there's things all around, not just like with gender, but I do just want to address and acknowledge that I have been very fortunate, even from my very first job. I mean, I had a VP was looking out for me when I went through my first ever leadership change within a company, and was like, oh gosh, like everyone else was leaving and finding new jobs, and like to each their own. I mean, very fortunate to have someone at a VP level for, I think it was like maybe just my first year of working, really had my back, left one of the like nicest voicemails I've ever had, and I still have it saved. Just because for a while it was really nice to know like someone really believed in me before I even really knew what was going on, and then I didn't get caught in, you know, all the other, you know, there's always politics wherever you are. But yeah, so really fortunate to have had that experience, and then also being able to make choices because I had financial security, or like, you know, I had different securities that maybe not everyone else has. So I think that I don't want to like make this misleading. They're like, oh, it's always like rainbows and flowers. These are unique perspectives from our lives. And then I understand not for everyone you're able to. And even like we keep talking about that communicating part. Maybe you have somewhere where you can't communicate, but it's, you can try and find something.
Yeah, your tip about like that I was saying, like to my younger self, I think you're 100% right. It's hard, and I think you said it very well. We've had a lot of privilege and a lot of luck with where we've gotten to. Yeah, I'll just leave it with what you said. I think that was very well said.
So it's really coming out of, we've been really focused on diversity and inclusion. So I definitely just want to address, I have had a privileged experience through it all, but that's not like, definitely in support of sharing our knowledge, and maybe something, a tidbit can help. But yeah, so the pros and cons of government contracting. This is another one with actually being just by luck, like with the furloughed, right? Because a huge con is, right, you can just, your contract's up and it's just up, and you were in the waters and stuff. So when we had the whole government furlough stuff, I know MetroStar as a company did a lot to protect its people who were on contracts that weren't in the budget yet and stuff. And I know there was a lot of work done for that, so we didn't have to lay off anyone. But for us, our project was already considered in the budget, so right, that's a con if you've ever been on that side of the story. And then I think pros are, this is so silly, maybe kind of shallow, but all the federal holidays, I think that is very much a pro. And I was just going to be very real about that. It is, you know, it's nice to have. And then why don't you take another pro? You probably have something more deep and insightful.
Oh no, I think I think you touched on it a little bit with one of the cons is I want to preface this, I do not feel like this at MetroStar with I've been very happy with my experience at MetroStar. I've been at another government contracting agency, which I was not as happy with. And I think that really like shaped my like fear of like being in this environment. And like I did not have the opportunity to have a conversation. I didn't have like those things that you're touching upon. And so when I came to MetroStar I then worked in higher education, which is like a totally like different ball game, and it's like very, very different. But coming back to MetroStar, like it really like it was like such a great environment. So I think maybe like a pro / a tip is to do your research on the different contractors that you're working for. I mean, and regardless of what type of job or industry you're in, do your research on the company to see what their vibe is. But like MetroStar is like very into like diversity and inclusion and equity, and like I feel like those like there's so many values at MetroStar that like I truly appreciate because they like mimic like my life values. So I think that a pro is finding a company that shares your values, and there are a lot of different projects. There are a lot of cool projects that government contractors are working on. I mean, they're doing stuff with like the stuff that gives back so much. And I know that it can be a lot of people think like, oh, like you're just like, you're doing a military contract, or you're doing something that like, doesn't really affect people. But I think there are tons of projects that, we at MetroStar are doing that really like that help real life people. And it's not just like we're like the company in like the sky that's just like not touching real lives. And so I think that they're like a huge pro is that you can make an impact. You can make an impact to individuals and to families. So I think that's a great pro. To your comment with I think many companies can be very like family friendly, like Metro is super family friendly. Like, and like I literally just also had a baby. So like MetroStar has been like super great about that. And like I've been able to kind of like working with my supervisors and the client, like kind of more like a schedule so I can do like pickups and stuff, or like, there are a lot of pediatrician appointments that first year that I'm learning. So like things like that. I think like a pro is that it is really it can be project specific and company specific, family friendly, and like great for women. So I think that's been something that's been like a really like pleasant surprise with it, because I think it gets a bad rap sometimes. And again, do your research on your company. Yeah, and like I said, yeah, I already went over like one of the cons, like you have to, I think one thing that is scary about government contracting is like contracts do end. So you kind of have to like be really, you have to be kind of flexible, like nimble to like roll on to a new project. And I think that like sometimes that can come off as a negative, but if you're growing towards something and like you are working with your company or working with, your growth plan of like where you want to go, I think that can also offer a lot of opportunity, even though in the middle of it, like it is scary to be like jump ship from like something, to like a whole new team project. But I think the opportunities are there to try new things and new skill sets and new team members. I think that's also like a cool thing about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to reframe the right contracts end, and like you might be like, oh my gosh, what am I do next? To reframe it that if you have like your growth plan, that you are talking with your supervisors, and as well as like just talking with anyone in the company, right? Like you kind of have to network within your company. Like they always say, like, go network outside of your company. I think within a government consulting firm such as MetroStar, it's really good to also just know folks on other projects. You might talk to them like once every 3 months or whatever, but just being a little social during your 40 hours of work not only makes it super fun when you like see people in the office, you like say, oh hey, what's up? Like I actually know you, and it's not like that person walking on the street that you see every time you both cross paths at 5 p.m. They're going somewhere, you're going somewhere on a routine. But just getting to know people, and I think that'll make the whole the project's coming to an end, be more like opportunistic, because you're like, oh, one's coming to the end, but then I get to go do another one. Because I've been talking to other people. We now have that internal job board, so you can even actively go look and see what roles are available and start to discuss it.
Yeah, and you hit upon something I want to bring up that was a really good point with being social outside of your project. And it is easy to get siloed on a project. I think it's just like it can naturally happen very easily. But one thing, we have talked a little bit about this previously, but with communities of practice. So like if you're like I think like one, if you like with a lot of things being virtual or people are remote, join a community of practice, even if it's not in your day-to-day daily jobs. I think it offers so much. Like we join and you encouraged me to join this one, the Scrum one. So like, yes, like I do project management. Am I a Scrum master? No. Do I have like a little bit of like, have I dabbled in it a little bit? Yeah, like I have some background, but like joining those where you learn from like real experts within the company of like their specific field, then like other people are like you on the call that like it might not be in like their particular job descriptions either, but then like you get, depending upon how the like the meeting is or how it's set up, you get like placed on teams with people. Then it's like natural, like you like, oh, like you're on this project, I'm on this project, and like you kind of form those connections. So I think that's a great, like awesome tip that you should be networking within your company, because like it's hard. Like it's hard to meet people outside of your project because you don't work with them on a day-to-day. But I think that at least like MetroStar offers opportunities that are like these meetings that you can like meet people and like, so you're not so like you have a common interest of being there, so you're not like the awkward turtle. Like,
it's so funny that you just said with being awkward. I was like, great, because on a project you're like forced to go through those awkward phases of not knowing your project teammates, and then you had meetings, you're with them for so many weeks, you get over it. But right, like networking is not my jam. I am not a full-on extrovert. I'm great if like I know the crowd, or at least like more than 50%. It's cool, but right, you have to like just keep putting yourself out there, keep getting through that awkward, like, okay, I got through like, oh hey, how's the day? Okay, cool. Maybe next time we see you, like I'll have more to say. But I think the communities of practice, like you were saying, it's good because there's a common interest there. So like you were like, at least like we can get in and nerd out about Scrum right now. And not like, oh, I'm gonna throw out a topic. I don't know if anyone else is interested in nerding out about it, but me.
Oh yeah, totally. Like I remember I joined MetroStar in like June of 2019, and this is before the pandemic, so we had like the like MetroStar picnic was in like July or August. So it was like very like soon after I joined, and I like didn't know anyone. Like I only knew like people on our project, and like, but like not a lot of people, like I just didn't really like know many people. And like to your point, like you just gotta like put yourself out there. And I like distinctly remember so MetroStar has like a back patio where a bunch of tables were at, and like they did like a tent, so it's like a big like barbecue thing. And so like I sat at like one of the like Erin, my wife Erin, and I sat like one of the tables in the back, and then Ali comes up giving raffle tickets, and like I like just joined this company. I was like, that's the CEO. Like look, I was like, so yeah, you just have to like go through that like discomfort and like just like get through it. And it's it's okay to be a little nervous. And
yeah, for sure. You're a braver soul than me. I did not go to that first one.
I think I was new, so I was like, gunner. I kind of
what else could happen?
Yeah, push through. And then of course it's like awkward for the CEO, so that worked out. So let's talk about when you leave a project, how you stay friends and close to the people that you've been on the project with.
Yeah, how are we doing it, Liz?
I would say I'll say that I think I could be better about tech, like IMing more. I got one of the things I'm working on is I got like a a new laptop, so I have like my project laptop. So I'm figuring out how to sync the two so I can be a little bit more like, I gotta like not like sync them like data wise, but like my MetroStar laptop on one side of my desk and then my other one on my other side. So I gotta work on my like setup a little bit. But I think, yeah, texting, IMing during the day. I actually just sent like my previous boss, or I don't want to say like our old manager, because I guess it's like my old manager, just sad. But I just sent her an email being like, just like a quick hi. So I think that's something we can do. And then mock it, of course. So I think that's like been amazing. What about you?
Yeah, well, I agree. I think with having projects outside of just your project, so we have Mocket that we do, so that keeps us, we have a group chat with you, me, and the rest of the Mocket crew. So that's really fun, and we have lots of meetings go on in there, and ideas sharing and just conversations. But also, if the company has other event planning going on, like I'm helping out with the Women's Equity Day panel planning, that is a tongue twister. So that's good. And I know previously, like we did a lot of stuff on a previous Women's Day panel. So being involved in those kinds of things, right? You and I get to continue to chat, and then also continuing to meet other folks within MetroStar. Right? And like I volunteer for a role that I have absolutely no idea quite what I'm doing in it, but I was like, great, this is a good risk to take. I'm just gonna learn more from it. I've definitely been uncomfortable in it already, but I'm getting through it. And then like you said, like texting, I think you should give yourself a little bit more of a break with having a new baby and a new job and figuring it all out. Like I know I texted you randomly last night. I don't expect you to text me when I'm texting you at like 8 p.m. You got an infant that's like on a schedule, then you're probably ready to go to bed too.
Oh, well, yeah, I appreciate that. I did. Yeah, no, it's thanks for saying that. I like 1 month in, I'm like, okay, like by next month I'm gonna be a little more smooth on operating with multiple laptops and networks and stuff.
Right, for sure. Right, like I'm not switching a project, switching what I'm doing, but that's, I have a lot of familiarity. I have my setup, set up. My kid is much older and more independent, so 8 o'clock at night can also be mama's time for her own entertainment.
Well, thanks for that. That was really nice, and those are also really good tips for people. Okay, so then how can we build up people starting on our project, and then how can we cheer people on when they start to migrate off of our project, or are like they're ready to kind of like they just need like a gentle push to you're ready to fly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. One more tip about the other one, because I was just thinking we just covered a lot of remote. So right, that is my point of view right now is right. I'm still very remote. We go in once a week, but also to stay connected is if you can plan, like if your projects are close by or whatever, like a quick walk for coffee, because everyone needs like a good walk and get up around from your desk, or lunch with somebody. So at headquarters, we have a couple of projects that are just based out of here. So as I've had other colleagues who I've worked with on projects, but they're on a different project. But we're all in the same location, at least pre-pandemic. So if that's for our listeners or anyone that you have a similar setup because you're all going back into the office now, right? It's like that 3 p.m. Hey, you want to go get some snacks from the convenience store? Those are other ways to stay in touch with people. That right, it's just really simple, and everyone needs to get up for a quick walk at least once during the day.
Yeah, that's a really great tip, and I think we our project, like thinking back, we did like happy hours, and we played online games, and like that was kind of fun because it's like it forces you not to sort of talk about work, and then like when you're playing games with people, like you can see like their natural, like your like professional wall comes down. So they can like, you can like see a little bit of like their people's real personality come out if, you know, you're like, they're like a little shy or whatever, or like just joining or, you know, what have you. So those are all great tips. You're on it today, Marie.
I'm really excited about these. When you brought up the ideas, I was like, yeah, I can jam with this. Like, we can totally talk about it. Yeah, I will say, even with the happy hours, and I know like everything sort of has its time to fizzle out, but we did have, so our project went through a couple of things. Some folks went and joined other companies, and then some folks just found other work because, you know, their life took them outside of the DC area. They were looking for different things. But we've had, right, those folks have come onto those happy hours like months later. So that's always really fun, just to know, like, we were pretty cool coworkers, that someone wants to like come on for like, you know, 30 minutes just to like chat and check in. And you just get to see like how well they're doing, and what they're succeeding at. So to get back to your question, that we were going celebrating other people, and make them full circle back to that.
Oh yeah, I love it, and I'm excited for the next our old projects happy hour. Like, oh, I'll crash that. I loved everyone I worked with.
Yeah, I know, we have to work on planning that again.
Yeah. So I think with like, so we'll start at the top of the circle with like bringing people onto the project. I think that I actually love onboarding people. I think that I thought we, like on our design team, like the UX team, we did a good job, because it was like, we were a little bit of a smaller team. So at any given time, it was at least the two of us, perhaps a third person. Most of the time there's three of us, and then like a fourth person that we would onboard, like depending upon how the project, you know, where we were in the project. I think that well, one, I think, you know, we were nice. So I feel like always like being nice and kind is like a good starting point for like building that relationship with people. But I think that we were also like very practical of like expectations up front, with like getting to know like where that person was at in their career, and like what they like to do, what skill sets they had. And then also like, even like outside of like, everybody needs to learn a new project. Like, that's when you get a new job, you have to learn a job. Like, that's like a given. Yeah. But it's like, what particular skill sets do you want to learn? Like, I know I've learned like so much from like the like design tools and stuff like that. Like, I didn't know any of them. I knew like of them, but I didn't know them in practice. And then it was like, you would always like send me like awesome articles, or like YouTube videos. You'd like send me like clips of YouTube videos. So I think like one thing I like really benefited from was like, you know, helping your teammate out with resources to like sort of like build them up in like a confident way, instead of being like, you're bad at XYZ, watch this video. It's like, oh, hey, like, you know, I just watched this video, like maybe you'll like it too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The only reason why like I huffed at this portion about onboarding is this is definitely something I am still working at getting better at. So I huffed out of my like, this is the full transparency, not where I'm very successful at, but like once, like you're saying, like once like we're on it and going, like I am all there to support, share resources, share ideas, but I know my abilities. It's definitely a challenge remote. So I definitely was just listening to a different podcast, oddly enough, this week, that they were talking that really an expectation could be that someone's shadowing you 3 to 6 months, as that's the onboarding, and not necessarily trying to give them tasks right away. Because like you said, you might know your specific skill set, but right, you don't know for us, thinking from the UX project perspective, they don't know the users that we're trying to solve for. They don't know the problems that we're trying to solve for. Right? There's so much that you're having to learn about the context of your project. That's not, you know, it's not the same as knowing the specific skill set that you have to bring to the project. So I just want to clarify, I wasn't like huffing because I'm better about than to onboard anyone. It's more, that's my struggle. I'm working on it.
As someone who got like well, you interviewed, so like I guess like you onboarded me a little bit. Like I thought I
But we
think
had it in person. Well,
yeah, that's true. That's
in person. The onboarding was in person, which I think I'm much better at. Definitely in the remote space, I'm like, well, it goes both ways on Teams. Like, if you got a question, you can ping me. Like, I'm not Mother Goose here to like check in with you, because most of the time, and that now that makes it sound like pretentious too. Most of the time is I have so many things like happening that I have all intention of like after stand up to ping somebody, and then like something comes up, and then it's like, oh crap, it's the end of the day. I'll try and remember this tomorrow. So,
yeah.
I always say, well, you prioritize that better, Marie. I can always go both ways on myself.
Oh no, and I think maybe like I'm like a little bit the opposite and should maybe more come to the middle, like towards the middle with you, or like towards your end with putting there like the onus of like, yeah, if you have a question, like come and ping me. Whereas I'm like, hi, like, do you have questions? Like, how can I help you? And I think like maybe like I'm overwhelming because it's like, like, lady, I just started. Like, I don't know what I don't know. So it's interesting though that the onboarding process is 3 to 6 months, because I think like when I heard that, I was like, 6 months, like now that I'm on like this new project, I've been on it for a month, and I'm like, oh, like I need to like speed up my knowledge and like get going, so I can contribute better, like XYZ. But I'm like, yeah, like 6 months, I think about the people like we've onboarded, it does take that amount of time, especially if you're in like the design space or the UX space, like learning who your customers are, and like there are like so many like ins and outs of that. So that in a way that makes me feel better, even though like on myself, like now that I'm going through it and like getting onboarded, I'm like, oh, I gotta like speed up, even though it's not that it's gonna do me any better if I know, like, taking the time to really get to know it versus like, trying to just get to the finish line too fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely, you're like confident by then. And I know we're talking about like switching projects, but I can relate it back to like, I hate switching jobs, like actual like from company to company. Because I don't feel, well, I know specifically for me, I've never like gotten my full on footing and started to like grow again until after being somewhere for a year. So
100% agree.
Right, like I'm growing and like learning and understanding more, but like, to actually like flourishing and like someone being like, oh, we need to do blah, 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 like kind of or there's an opportunity to do this, right? Like now on night tech, I'm like, oh, hey, actually, can I do that? To kind of go like touch on what we talked about at the top of the episode about how you can grow your career on your projects. There's been, tasks and items that have come up that are, outside of UX design, but more in like that product owner or the management role. And I've been like, oh, hey, can I actually take a stab at that first? And then share with you. But you don't, at least not for me, right? Not until like the first year of being somewhere am I flourishing like that. Like I'm just getting getting your task done, being an accountable teammate, showing up, asking the questions you need to ask to figure it out. But I feel like you're figuring it out and growing in that sense until like you're now flourishing in whatever way you want to grow.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the first year of a new job is hard because there's just so many things, like you're learning the company culture, you're learning like the company rules, like even like not necessarily like employment rules, but like when they have like open enrollment, like what's like, who do you talk to if you need to get help with your computer? Who do you talk to if like you have a benefits question? Like it's like not even like the actual like functions of your job, but just like how to be an employee of that company. Mm-hmm. And then I also think going through the cycle for 1 year, like you've seen depending upon like obviously it's like project dependent, but like you've had 1 year to like see it from like start to finish, depending upon again
like a cycle at least.
Yeah, the cycle of
that,
it,
like a phase.
Yeah. So I think that I 100% agree with you. And like now that like I'm on a new project, it's kind of weird because like I was saying earlier, like I feel like I'm very confident with like MetroStar, like, oh, like, I have friends at MetroStar, I know who to talk to, like I know if I have a question, like if I don't know who to go to, I know who I can ask to figure out how to go to. Whereas like, so I don't have to like have any of that stuff, but then on my like new project, I'm like learning like, oh, like who's my friend on the project? Like who can I like, I don't want to ask, like sometimes you don't want to ask your boss because you want to, like who's like that person that you can go to. So it's like relearning all of those things. So yeah, I 100%, I think that's like very true the first year. So then, so like we talked about like onboarding people, like how to make that a good experience, or like how to like bridge those relationships. But then the second part of that is then like how do you cheer on people who are leaving your project to make it like a career move, or what have you, go to a different project. I'll say like from personal experience, like you've like been like a huge cheerleader, like the market team has been a huge cheerleader. Obviously, like our manager has been like amazing. And then like everyone at MetroStar is just like kind of, I've had to like fill out different paperwork that I wasn't used to. Like I'm like obviously going from, I'm going to a military contract, so there's like a learning curve, and people have kind of been helping me like feel confident that even though I don't have a military background, like it's okay and I belong. So I think that like I just want to like give credit to the people who like helps me like cheer me on. And I think that like it has made like a world of difference knowing that like you have that support system. But then I don't know, like you were just like being you. So I don't know, like what tips do you have for people?
Yeah. Well, I would say it's definitely a mindset, right? Like we're not in these jobs to compete against each other, right? So like your success doesn't hinder my opportunities to succeed. I think actually, in fact, the more that the folks around me succeed, the more that then I can succeed, right? Because we're all building on top of different blocks. So then we can all, we do more. We have a fire alarm? No?
I think somebody came through the door that they weren't supposed to.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, okay. So we're gonna get back to it. So right, it's the my success isn't dependent on anyone else's success, nor is it hindered. And then I actually think the more everyone around you succeeds, there's a lot of the word. Everyone succeeding around me, I can succeed more as well. So you can keep building, because right, if I don't have a colleague or a teammate that is growing wherever they want to grow, right? Either I'm still trying to cover for that, or we're filling in and like a new position has been created, right? Success leads to more success. It's not competitive of, oh no, I got this. Like, what about me? It's just like, awesome, good job. Like, and then you have your own personal goals that you're going for or interests.
Yeah, I love that. And I think especially like working with like you and like the everyone like behind Market, like I feel like it's like such a team effort that like everyone's like has like the same goal, and it's not like oh like this person, exactly what you said, like this person, it doesn't hinder you. So I think that's been like something that's been like really like beautiful about this job at MetroStar, like, and especially like again, like going back to my fear of like going back into like government contracting, I was very afraid that it would be like cutthroat, like people would like topple you before you could even like get a knee down to kneel or whatever. But like here it's just been like your success is my success, like it's different, like we're in this together. It doesn't have to be like you're taking like it's a pie. It's not like you're not taking a bigger slice or not. Like I don't know what that analogy is, but it's like about a pie, and it's like your pie, like you getting a piece of the pie doesn't make my slice small. I don't know, there's some analogy messing up right now.
No, I think you were really close to it. It is something about that, like just you taking a piece doesn't make mine smaller.
So yeah, well, that's, I don't know. I think that I've been very lucky, and I am very appreciative that everyone's like sort of this environment just like pumps you up to like be your best and to help others be their best.
Yeah. And then I would say, because I know you mentioned I'm a very big cheerleader for everyone. So once we get past onboarding, I'm very much I think it comes from having coached for so long. I want to see people grow. I don't need to be gatekeeping information for me to only keep it. Because one, I don't want to be doing exactly what I was doing 3 years ago, right? I want to grow as well. So, and if I can share whatever for someone else to continue to grow in their path, or just support them in a mentorship, which is really the accountable step I've been holding myself to. So like we mentioned with Bree's episode, Bree and I meet bi-weekly. And I didn't want to say anything in that episode because that episode was her time to shine. But while we're talking about how you can help other people shine in their success, we've been meeting, and my goal initially was just to give her someone to discuss the DEI with, and then also, especially for creatives, if you don't have a deadline, great stuff can just keep going, and it can keep going. And there's been weeks that we've skipped that meeting because of project stuff or whatever, but just being able to set that conversation time so that within the 2 weeks, while she was looking at stuff, she could come and we could talk about it. And then we could come and talk about how do we now outline this. That she has a lot more exciting things to come. So I don't want to spoil because it's not my success, but it's really cool to see her grow and flourish. And really, I was just there to support as like a accountability, you know. It's really, that's all Bree. I'm learning from her. I'm super interested in that topic as well. So that's been rewarding twofold. And then with you, I know we had our first one. We got a little sidetracked just to like catch up more than actually talk about what you're going to start diving into. But I think that's part of it, of checking in with people and helping them have someone to be, you know, friendly, accountable to, right? Like, obviously it's not stressful.
But yeah, and I think, you know, you're not, it's very kind that you're giving other people, you know, it's like their time to shine. But I will say, like, I think that you have like 100% flourished in that role. Like, you're an awesome mentor. You make sure that people, like, it's low key in the sense of like, it, like, just like you're saying, it's like not scary.
Mm-hmm.
People can come and like talk to you about anything, and like you really like go out of your way to make sure that people have the resources they need, and like more so like the emotional like it's like stability, like it's like you're very comforting as a cheerleader, and like make it like I've like really loved watching you become a mentor, and I think that's been like really cool. And then like I appreciate that like we have our meetings to like, you know, like check in and like again like not hold each other accountable, but like, you know, a place to have a deadline, or
Yeah.
at least like a check mark or a checkpoint.
Or at least like I've checked 5 resources since the last time. So we can talk about this more. Okay, like it's not like school, it's not super intense because it is all additional stuff to, you know, our contractual work. But we've talked about this before. I think you should enjoy what you do for work. Right, there's good days, bad days, and then you can also have like side projects that, you know, are enriching to you because you spend a lot of time at work. So it should be enjoyable. It should not just be like, you know, talking in the hours.
Yeah, 100% agree. And then I'm gonna wrap us up with putting each of us on the hot spot, or the hot seat, with the same question that we've been asking each of our guests this season, which is, and I'll ask it to you if you don't mind going first.
Sure.
So what is the most promising thing that you've seen with the progression of design in government?
I think the most promising thing as far as progression is, so before the executive orders that came out a couple of months ago, there's this big thing about like the CX report card. And I thought it was a very interesting concept. I think it had very good intentions. But I think having these executive orders kind of built on top give that spot, and like what USWGS is doing to you know, unify and have the same patterns on websites of how things are laid out, how they function, gives it more footing, so that progression is actually going to continue, rather than people saying, well, it's so nice to have, or like with accessibility sometimes. come across recently people saying, well, like our sample size is so small, we don't really need to work on that. And I was like, all right, let's meet like halfway. Like, let's do some baseline, like, I'm gonna drop out some random things like the ARIA labels, or even just color contrast. And I think besides the EO and then also having the experience on our project, we had it and it really saved our butt when somebody within like our project sphere of people, they, you know, life happens, things happen, and now they rely on accessible technologies. So I think it's the promising thing is seeing those orders go in and then people actually acting on them. And then for you.
I was gonna say like really similar. I was gonna say, I feel that like there has been a shift recently that government is accessible, and it's not just like these like random people are running the country. It is like, I think that there's been sort of with these, or I was gonna say something with the executive order. So with the executive orders, I think that like there is like a real effort to make sure that government is accessible to everyone. And it's accessible to farmers, from like, you know, farmers to execs to people who are different socioeconomical levels, especially with some of the new like internet becoming more accessible. And I think like, so it's like bridging these gaps, and like obviously like we talk about like tech and design a lot, and like we're in this field and we've had a lot of privilege to be in the field because we've had, you know, opportunities to education and opportunities to jobs and stuff like that. But I think that there is like a shift of like real effort to make government accessible to real people, regardless of, you know, if you're a third generation XYZ, or if you're like, you know, someone who immigrated here, like you like the opportunities are there, and the information is accessible to be there. So I think that that's been something that's been like really rewarding to see. And it's also like made like my time as a government contractor, like I don't feel like I'm just clocking my hours, like you're like, you know, just like the example you're saying, like I don't think like I'm just clocking my hours or like I'm just like slugging through. I'm like, oh, like I'm making an impact that's going to help people. And I think that that's been like really nice to see. And I hope that I really just hope it continues, because I think that it like that's what we should be doing, you know, obviously like that's the personal value of mine, like equity. So, and like I know that that's like so important to you too with like DEI and stuff. So I think seeing in practice from people who actually have the power to make it and implement it has been like, it just, I think it's really promising, and it was rewarding to be part of that endeavor.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, nice. All right. Any last thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
No, not this time. I don't need to go back to another topic that we
cool. Like, we will be back with another one-on-one to go to our next topic. So this is Mock-It. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and join us next time. If you're interested in learning more about how government and tech collide, visit MetroStar.com and follow along on socials.
Marie is a former visual designer turned agile-loving, human-centered design advocate. They have helped government organizations for almost a decade build successful digital products by aligning cross-functional teams around a deep understanding of the user at the heart of their mission. Marie is passionate about advancing girls and women in technology and has curated several educational, hands-on experiences for all ages. Liz is a user experience strategist turned project manager committed to human-centered driven approaches and results. She has worked on 20+ higher education, government, and client-facing websites and software platforms, creating long-lasting, user-focused digital solutions. Liz is devoted to equity and strives to celebrate diversity and inclusion.